All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Gulf.spec podcast. Clearly, we've hit the big time. We now have a studio. We own it. We promise. No. But more importantly, Anwar and I are actually in the same location. And along with us, we have Imthishan Giado. Did I say it right?
We've been doing this for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you want to actually pronounce your name
Giado?
properly?
Imthishan Giado.
Giado.
It's on the record now.
I was going to say Gallardo, but
Gallardo's a great name.
that's what we should go with. That's your new name.
Yeah.
Imthishan Giado.
The day I own a Gallardo, that will be an interesting discussion.
You should rebadge it so it says
Exactly.
Lamborghini Giado.
Exactly.
I like the fact it's also one day. That's a no. I mean it. It's a nice perspective to have. You
One
have
day-
some interesting cars.
I
But
will have to say the story one day of how I nicked a Gallardo and didn't give it back.
that's an episode.
Are you
2.
getting a first generation Gallardo or a second generation Gallardo?
The first gen.
Good man.
The second Gallardos don't look as nice. They make more power. The first ones are a bit more raw. But then if you have the Performante or the Superleggera, they are incredible cars.
5 litre versus 5.2? I think firing order. No firing order.
Honestly, the early ones are lighter and more interesting. But
You can't go by the way. So
So let's just kick off with this, right? We've known Imthishan a while. He is a veteran journalist in the UAE and in the Middle East and just all-round cool car guy. So, but that's what we think of him. Imthishan, what do you want to tell us? Who are you? Don't get too deep about it.
I'll try to keep it short. So I started off basically as a technology journalist and did a very long stint writing ACN, which was Arabian Computer News, possibly the region's oldest computer magazine, which was a big deal back in the day. At some point, I reached the dream. I achieved nirvana and I wrote for Car Middle East, which was and remains the best car magazine ever written in the Gulf with my compadre Shazad Sheikh. Once that completed, we went off and started our own thing called Motoring Middle East, and that became its own colossus, and that went on for about 7 or 8 years, during which I dallianced with everything else. We did a lot of work with the car meet side of things, the Sahlawis, etc., who did car meets and so on. We were early pioneers, I want to say, in that space. We were the people pushing through to make those things happen. I'm so glad that they're doing it much better than we ever did. We also did some early work with agencies as Anwar, Alexander,
right?
as I call him, Alexander.
The artist formerly known as Alex.
Yeah.
I flipped it around. Went to Europe. I went with my brown name.
So essentially, we were early in the advertorial space and early influencing, but we had no idea what it was going to become and what it is today. We had no idea it's going to end up like that. So apologies for everybody else out there. And these days, I write for Arabian Gulf Business Insight and pretty much anybody who wants a serious take on cars and the industry and the people who buy them.
First of all, I've been working a lot with business journalists and publications a lot in my current role right now because I do nothing related to cars. And that's where I started seeing your name pop up again. And I got so happy about it. I was like, first of all, he's writing again. Second of all, I think if you've listened to the first 2 episodes, you might have noticed a trend that I actually care more about the industry and like how it functions.
Sorry,
and
Seal.
Yeah, the business side rather than the actual, the steering feel on the 1945, whatever. I care a little less about that. I do care about it, but less. So it's really good to see you writing for like AGBI, in my opinion.
And a few other people that you'll see them coming up. But look, I think you need to be a driver. I think you need to care about the cars. It's very easy to get lost in the weeds and get caught up in the numbers and the sort of soulless side of the business, the corporate side of the business. So one thing I realized, because I was kind of the business side of Motoring Middle East, I was the guy who was always dealing and talking with the agencies and the car companies and so on. I realized what they do, what they want and what they want to achieve is often very much at odds with what consumers want. Car companies want to make money. They just want to make money.
Yeah.
And
Well, what do consumers want in that?
Other than Jaguar.
consumers want something that meets their needs. And that depends from consumer to consumer. Asil, our good friend, he might want a car that feels great, looks great, makes him feel good. Somebody else
doesn't work.
It goes hand in hand. But some people might want a car that really kind of is just a box on wheels that they can put their stuff in. Another person wants that, but it goes off-road. Another person wants that, but it takes their whole family up and down hills, and doesn't need to go off-road. Each person has a different box of requirements. Car company's job is to take that box and sell that plus 10%. That's literally it. In between, they can be good corporate citizens. They can, do lots of nice things for the world. They can make some exceptional cars. But really, first and foremost, make money. My take today is I think we are entering a world where that has become everything, the making money part, and we're losing the art of it. We're losing the things that inspire. And that's a bit dangerous, because when you start only focusing on the money, only focusing on the Excel sheets and the bottom line, and you rub out the people who make cars special, you are writing your own death warrant, very slowly but surely. And you leave yourself at the mercy of people like the vast number of Chinese manufacturers, for example, who can make these things cheaper, better, and faster than you. And when I say better, I mean they can produce them more quickly. They're not necessarily better cars.
Well, they're appliances.
Not
Which
only-
is not as a detraction rather, but as in your equation earlier, that's kind of what most people are looking for, an appliance. That's absolutely fine. A white Fortuner is always kind of a bit of a washing machine, but if you wanted a washing machine, maybe you can buy one for a bit cheaper from a brand that
You
you
don't
don't
need a
really care about.
Fortuner. You can buy a Jetour that looks better than a Fortuner and looks like it can go off-road. And since you don't go off-road anyway, it doesn't matter. Here's a good statistic for you. Land Cruiser owners, previous one, the 200, the big blocky thing, right? The new one, I don't have figures on it yet, but the previous one, the dealer commissioned a study of how many people went off-road. Do you gents care to guess? Of the owners of the total life cycle from
Which
2007.
market?
The total number of
total number of like global. Okay.
No, UAE.
Oh,
obviously
UAE. Okay, fine.
Okay.
2007 to 2000, I guess 19. whatever.
Self-reporting? Because
They're-
that's also a thing, right? Because I think quite a few people.
Well,
might
they
be like,
obviously are doing market research, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not. They're not asking every one of the thousands and hundreds of thousands of customers.
No, what I mean is that like a lot of people I think would have bought that might be embarrassed about the fact that, as you're clearly hinting at, have not got off road. But that's a segue anyway.
Why
But
don't
yes,
you-
go
why
on.
The
don't you just
suspense
answer-
is killing me. I
Just
need the
answer
number.
the question. What's your guess?
Well, I would
Percentage.
5%.
What's yours?
15.
He should play poker because he'd win. 5% exactly.
Wow, well done.
Nice.
5% of Land Cruisers.
Only 5% of Land Cruiser owners go off-road, which means that's probably even less, because that's people. What is off-road, right? It could be just going off a curb, going onto the beach. Who knows? But 5%, that's it. And that is the king of all terrain or the hero or whatever they market it at these days. And
I think
imagine that.
That's the patrol's tagline, hero of all terrain.
I don't know, these taglines are special, but they do convey this. I think they, in other languages, have a certain poetry and symmetry to them. So I don't want to be difficult with that.
So I've left the region and I've just come back now for the longest time period in a few years, and it's really nice to kind of come back and look at it from a new perspective. And I had a thought on the way here, and I think that's kind of, I want to test what you're saying because I kind of have a different perspective, and I don't have the figures to back it up. But what I have noticed though is there are a lot of more people thinking about their image in Dubai in general. And I think one of the reasons for that is just that there's so many damn cameras. So if there's so many cameras, people don't mean it. Like there's just a more number of cameras. And if there are more number of cameras, more pictures being taken. If there's more pictures being taken, there are more things, there are more opportunities for the aesthetics to matter. And I don't want to get into too much philosophy, but like I do think the brandification of life in general has happened, and the car is in that part. And in the UAE, I feel like more than anywhere else I've experienced, people really care about their brand image. The Chinese car does not carry yet the same brand image as legacy manufacturers. In this market where maybe you have a different experience, but what I'm suggesting is people really do care about their image and care more and more about it. That seems to be going into loggerheads with this idea of just a Chinese car that is an appliance that doesn't come from a brand that has an image it is portraying. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you square that circle, or is it wrong?
I think Chinese cars, for the vast majority of people who buy them, don't have a negative brand image, right? They have a
Neutral.
neutral, as every good marketer in their deck goes negative, positive. And for a lot of enthusiasts, let's just assume, make a hasty generalization, it's a negative. But That doesn't matter because that's not a lot of people. And they don't really make the decisions. Otherwise, the Jetour wouldn't be part of the number 4 brand in the UAE.
Is it a good car?
It does what it says.
Does it defend? I'm sorry, last one. I know a big car. Does it defend? Because it looks like it wants to defend. It's a defender.
I've gone off road with it, and it's reasonably okay in the desert. It does the basics okay. It's better than you'd expect, but not as good as you'd hope. Whereas the Defender is a lot better than you think it is. But the Defender also has limitations off road, and
But both are clearly better than the Ineos Grenadier.
that's a tricky one.
Okay.
Ineos Grenadier is a good car. I will say that.
What? No.
Hold that thought.
I've spent 2 whole episodes telling people it's terrible.
Slander.
Have you
Well, but to the point you made earlier, 5% of buyers of Land Cruisers, how many G-Talk buyers actually care about that? But then back to maybe
Probably
what I'm
about the
saying.
same.
But they're all giving
If I
that
can make a
image
point
of
here. Oh,
off-road,
sorry.
right? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I think there's two things to that. One is when you say it has a neutral brand image, it also, when you buy a Chinese car, because of the value for money component, you're automatically getting something that is aesthetically superior if you do not know anything about the brands or whatever, which a lot of people don't. Like, it's already a neutral brand. It doesn't matter. Mitsubishi is a neutral brand. Mazda is a neutral brand. And what happens is you get something that doesn't look like it's a stripper base model. What you get is something with big wheels, big screens, often leather or leatherette, and I think
Which
that
is
makes a
not
difference.
how, sorry to interrupt you, which is not how the Japanese brands operate, because there's
Yeah.
very clear stratification of those brands. You get to see cars that are like really stripper Land Cruisers, and then you get to see really blinged out VXR,
Yeah.
VX blah, blah, blah things.
But is that the dealer or is it the manufacturer? Because
What's the difference?
well, the dealer orders models, and the manufacturer will want to make a wide range of different versions of, for example, like the Mazda 6, a Lancer, or a Corolla, for example. Many markets, a Corolla is a fancy car. But the dealer here will decide how they would like to spec their vehicles for this region. So is it a dealer decision then to decide to bring those models? And are they now suffering maybe...
It is 100% a dealer decision. The dealer specs all the cars at every level. The manufacturer gives guidance on how they can be specced, but it's the dealers who order the actual cars at the end of the day.
So the Japanese stripper models that have no brand appeal because they've got the small wheels or hubcaps.
The XLs, we used to say in the 80s, the
Yeah.
XL cars, because they were just
XLI,
the
yeah.
XLI was a little fancy, but XL is
when
like,
they got injection.
no, it wasn't injection.
No.
XLI typically meant things like you'd have, and I'm talking like really old, like Cressidas in the 80s.
Oh yeah, no.
an,
That's,
an XLI Cressida, would be rear window wipers, but it would still be wind up windows. That's literally what the I meant.
that is 100% this exact example I was thinking of, because my dad had a 93 Cressida, and he was looking for the GL model in particular, because he was buying
GL had
secondhand.
electrics.
Yeah, the GL had electrics. It had painted bumpers and door handles and mirrors, and it had nicer plastic hubcaps.
Yeah, they're different, but that was it. I mean, there were no options, but they all had the same radio, same number of speakers. So they was much simpler. Today, there's so much more stuff that goes into cars. So you can also really make differences.
But
in
then why
price.
have the same dealers decided to buy nicer Chinese cars? Is it a price difference? Is it...
I would slightly counteract that. I
Sure.
would say there are some people who are bringing in fully spec Chinese cars, and GAC is a good example. GAC brings in pretty loaded cars, but then the vast majority are actually mid to low end spec. Like MG sells probably the most, I would say, rental spec cars, and they're not high spec cars, and that's where the money is made because you're spending the same amount.
It's a volume game.
Yeah, you're selling a huge amount of volume.
All right, but counterexample, right? MG7.
Yeah.
Gorgeous looking thing. It's got the retractable spoiler. I don't know if it's any good to drive or anything like that. But even the base model has leatherette. It has a massive infotainment screen, like decently sized wheels, and comes in at about like what, 100,000 dirhams or something around that point. If you want something similar from a competitor, not that anyone even makes anything in that segment anymore, like what are we left with? The Mazda 6, the Camry, and the Accord?
Which I think is well over 100K each. All those cars are over
Or the
100K.
BYD Han or whatever it was
the
called.
the Mazda 6 actually starts at about 85 or something, but it is a platform from about 20 years ago at this stage. It is archaic. I drive one. I love it, but
I love the 6.
Yeah,
I would
me
not
too.
have a word. I would have a 6 over any of these Chinese cars.
100%. And that's what I did. But actually, no, there were no. I think the options were pretty crap when I bought my car. A lot has changed since 2022. But
But the 6 is still an excellent car. And a pleasure to own. And I don't know if that's the same for these Chinese cars. They're just appliances which lose a lot of money when you go on to sell them. But people are happy with that deal.
But I think that's what I'm getting at with the image conscious thing, right? Like if you're going to spend 100K on a MG7, it looks the business. Whereas if you want a Honda Accord, you're out of pocket at least 123, I think it was
And
the
you
last
just
I
got
saw.
an Accord at the end of the day. I think
I have a stigma problem with the Accord, actually.
So I wanted an Accord really badly, but I couldn't quite stretch it. But I bought an Orion instead, which was very unusual. The V6
The
Camry,
V6 Camry from the Australia.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because I lived in Australia a long time, and I was a big fan of how the Australians did their cars. They made nice chassis setups. But the Accord was and is and remains a better car to drive than the Camry. It's closer now.
But did it matter because of the volume? And now with the Chinese
The
coming,
owners who bought them, at one point, Honda was doing serious volumes, like 25,000 cars a year.
Here.
That time has changed quite a bit now.
The current Accord is, if I recall correctly, in every market it's being sold in, pretty much selling well below expectation. That
Not
it's not just
necessarily.
it's not just the market shrunk. This is what I recall reading. It's not just that the market shrunk, it's that I think a lot of people do not find it was styled well enough. I think that's the exact feedback Honda has shared. I could be wrong, but I remember a report coming out that Honda feels like they misjudged not just what the market they misjudged what the market wanted out of that car.
The current Accord is in the current model on sale.
Yeah, the hybrid.
I'm trying to recall here my exact numbers. I will say that in the US, they sell by the bucket load. They do pretty okay in China as well. US is their market now, so they don't care about anybody else, essentially.
But it underperformed in the US as well. That's
But it's
what
also a
came
more
out.
expensive car now because
Yeah.
it's more contented. It is a more expensive platform. It's bigger. They've gone to a more expensive base model, which is essentially they're trying to hybridize everything. They don't
Right.
want to really do base full cylinder. They don't want to do the volumes. They want to make it more and more expensive. Similar to what Mazda is trying to do as a whole. So these cars are essentially part of the car maker's effort to slowly move upmarket because that's how you survive when you're a small car company. Honda is the biggest maker of engines in the world. 18 million engines sold every year.
bikes as well,
Everything.
I guess. Yeah.
Generators,
Engines, boats,
jets.
lawnmowers, car engines as well. But
Mm.
generally, they sell a ton of engines. And for them, the cars are a big part of that deal, but they have a very, very tight group that they focus on. And they don't really want to do anything unless they're very, very sure. They're about to roll out the electric car. And I was in some discussions about it today, and that's going to be very interesting.
In
But
this market.
in this market.
Howell, can we talk about that for a second?
Okay.
Talking about Chinese cars, electric cars in this region are a bit funny, aren't they? Coming from Europe, at
Like,
least.
ha funny or
Like,
No,
well, how
just-
are they funny? Yeah.
Well,
actually.
no, very simple. Like this region was made on oil, and they don't run on oil. They don't run anything like that.
So this is interesting.
Okay.
I actually had this conversation with a consultant to ADNOC last year at some point, and people like ADNOC don't care whether you drive a petrol or an electric car because ultimately the energy grid is still powered by the same thing.
powered by ADNOC one
Yeah.
way or the other.
So so even if you are charging your car, where is that charge coming from? You see what I'm saying? So it could be a natural gas thing. It could be there are multiple ways to fuel the grid, and they aren't necessarily disadvantageous to.
Given that we are kind of following the Chinese model, don't be surprised if we see a lot of electric recharge stations pop up over the country. The problem is right now there's a lot of confusion, and Diva's got a lot of work ahead of it to make it work out. But people are thinking about it and how to do it. You need to have a Chinese-style grid and infrastructure, otherwise you don't get to that kind of penetration. But I think electric cars out here have gone well past the stage of being, should I? Maybe I should, to being like, which one should I buy?
So when I was buying my car in 2022, right, I had the Polestar 2 firmly on my list. But as you know, I commute very regularly between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And the range anxiety, because the Polestar 2's range is not phenomenal. It's one of the older electric cars on the market right now. And I was like, I couldn't do it. And I just didn't
Why not a
want it.
Tesla, long range?
I just didn't want a Tesla. Even back then.
Why didn't you want a Tesla?
The brand image, right? Even before he went
What's wrong
full-
with the brand
Who
image?
do you mean?
I
I mean, it's
see.
not elephant in the room. It's obviously Elon Musk is a bit of a fascist at the moment.
But
and,
yeah,
it's not
he
good for
wasn't in
brand.
2022, right? But there was this whole stigma of it being like the choice of like the douchebag tech bro plus
Not the choice of a Pepsi generation, essentially. Yes, it was completely the opposite.
Yeah, and it was also the roofs blowing off the cars, the build quality issues.
Taxis? Do you remember when they first introduced them here for a long
I'm
time?
not worried
They were
about that. That actually, taxi cars never worried me. That's not a stigma that bothers me, right? I'd buy a Lexus ES tomorrow.
I would buy a Lexus ES. I would not necessarily buy a Tesla taxi. I think I've done a couple of rides in Model 3s. That is not a great AC. In the summer, I look at the poor beads of sweat on my taxi driver and I think, oh, there, but for the grace of God go I. And this gentleman has to spend all day
Is
in a
it
car.
range, do you think, also?
No, it's just the car's already uncomfortable to be in.
Made in Texas as well, aren't they now?
Yeah. And if you have to then say, okay, that guy's doing it for a living, I don't want to necessarily be commuting to Abu Dhabi and back in a car with bad AC. That's plain and simple because we are from the UAE and that takes all precedence.
That's the real GCC spec, isn't it?
That
It
is
was always like
How is the AC?
it's the AC. Yeah.
I mean, but if you asked me to make the same decision again today, I live down the street from the Neo house in Abu Dhabi, right? Like, Neos are quite well priced. The range looks good. The cars look fantastic. I would consider one of those. One of my wife's friends just got the BYD Seal. Looks great.
Bad name.
But
So a lot of people have changed in the Middle East. We've all changed. We're all a little wider, thicker than we used to be,
Grey
etc.,
hairs.
grayer, etc. And a lot of it is there is a small subsect of enthusiasts, which again don't matter, unfortunately, from a business perspective,
sorry, a Seal.
who basically
I would love to debate that with you afterwards because I have a point.
who want to keep things the way they were, and I love things the way they were. It wasn't always great for people that looked like me, but it was nice for have things the way they. I am a big fan of vintage 4x4s and stuff like that. But a lot of consumers today, and this is pan nationality in the UAE, are, as you say, brand image focused, but also very much slightly hipster, slightly iconoclastic. So what do I mean by that? They essentially say, I want a new car, but I don't want the car my dad had. So if the old generation were like, so you can see where I'm going here. They're like, oh, I had an Accord. My dad had an Accord. Yeah. His grandfather had an Accord. We are Accord people. And now it's like, hell no, will I not buy an Accord? I'm going to buy this Chinese thing precisely because it's in opposition to what my dad did.
I absolutely. That's
when
I
why
said
your
I had a
friends are
stigma
buying
against the Accord. The Accord and the Camry are two cars I will not touch because they were my dad's cars.
Which is ironic because today I think those cars are. If we ever did a Radwood, would be great Radwood cars. If you get like an Accord with the pop-up headlights, how rare is that?
Oh, a GCC
or an Accord,
Radwood would be quite cool.
An Accord Aerodeck, a very rare car.
But do you know
which
what I mean?
Aerodeck are we talking about? There were a
There's
few,
only
right?
one Aerodeck.
No, so the station wagons for the American spec cars, they called that the Aerodeck as well, apparently.
Well, they're wrong. The Aerodeck.
So you're talking about the two-door, the shooting brake.
Yeah, they shoot the weird Aerodeck. But they're basically those at the time Honda was doing weird stuff. And remember the Motocompo? Remember the Honda City Turbo 2 with the little motorcycle in the back? NSX was them trying to beat Ferrari.
Was it the pinnacle? Let's not get into the 90s boom on everything. Or the 80s boom, really. But yeah.
But they had a certain way of attacking it and doing it. And that's, I think, what separates them from the likes of the Chinese. Because you don't get that dreamer quality from the Chinese brands yet. That's the struggle, is to find out what exactly they want to achieve apart from selling lots and lots of cars.
Hold on. I want to go on that. And I think this, because my job now at the moment has been focused on motorsport. And Yoshiro Honda was always a motorsport man to begin with. And I think a lot of these car companies were set up by people who have motorsport background. Hence the cars themselves having some more interesting driving dynamics. The Chinese brands do not seem to be set up by people with that same background. There's a lot more mobility focused. So I just find interesting that maybe the thing we're missing is the simple fact that these companies were set up by men and women who wanted to solve a mobility problem rather than having like racing in their veins. Do you guys agree?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like Hyundai found their way eventually, right? And I feel like if you've seen some of GAC's cars, it feels like they seem to be getting the picture, But I think it happens over time because there is, however small a market, there is a slight niche that is profitable in there, I think.
Have you encountered a Chinese enthusiast car or a car that would be appealing to a driving enthusiast? And I don't mean off-road.
Pause for effect. I don't think there is one yet. I don't think there is a single car
That you've
that is-
experienced it, I guess.
that I've even thought about walking into the showroom. There's a lot of product, but to me, it feels like shopping at Dragon Mart. There's 1,000 vendors and they all sell the same stuff. And if you don't like this one, you go to another shop, you get the same thing with a different label on it. And it's only about price then, right? It's not about quality or how you use it or any of that stuff. So I think right now the Chinese companies need to differentiate themselves and actually do the thing that they don't want to do, which is have a story, have a brand history, have engineers, have people that are basically saying, okay, why are we building these cars apart from we want to make money? Because they can make money and they're pretty good at making money. And the way things are going, they're already the biggest car maker in the world without doing any of the things that you've needed to do in the past, right? But
All this legacy, yeah.
But that only gets you to the point where you are able to make white goods cars. So that allows you to basically take over the world very quickly. But then you can't keep the world. Just like the Roman Empire collapsed, right? In the same way, the Chinese car companies will all slowly, and I think we're at that stage now because BYD is just under huge financial pressure right now, to essentially, they're all just cannibalizing each other now because they've all been subsidized, etc.
Well, that's coming to an end, isn't it? The
Subsidies are going to sell because China is in financial trouble as well. So now you can't just keep flooding every other market with cars. You flood the zone, as the American conservatives would say. How long can you keep doing that? Who's paying for that? And somebody's going to stop paying for that. And then you have to survive on your own merits. And then the real value of these cars.
Well, there's a couple things, right? Like one is that, I mean, first going back to the enthusiast bit, I think GAC might be doing something. They've got the MPOW, and now they've got the MPOW R.
I'm curious, what is the enthusiast aspect of the GAC MPOW? Because I've driven a lot of MPOWs.
Not the MPOW, the MPOW R.
I haven't driven that one.
Okay.
But I take
So-
the regular MPOW.
So the
stands
fact
for
that
red.
it's R, it's more powerful. It's got like the bucket seats and the body kit and everything. And I'm like, okay, it's an enticing price. The horsepower looks good. The setup, it basically looks like the Chinese equivalent of a Jetta GLI, right? That's what I mean. I want to say GTI, but it's not a hatchback.
It's a great looking car. The GAC MPOW. I call it the GAC.
The GAC MPOW R, and Alex or Anwar pointed out to me. I mean, that would have been a different story. Pointed out to me that
Different studio.
Abt, the German tuning company, now does GACs.
ABT.
Because there's a market
Is it
for
Abt or ABT?
It's a name, it's Abt. Yeah.
Okay,
Abt.
Abt.
Yeah.
But I've driven the GAC MPOW, not the R.
Did it
And
make
I
you
will
gack?
say, it did not. It's a perfectly fine car. It looks amazing. It looks like a Civic Type R. It looks so aggressive. And then you actually drive it, and then you're like, it's just a car. It's
So I
literally
want to
just a
drive
car.
the R, right? Like I've asked about a test
I mean,
drive.
I wouldn't
for it.
get your hopes up. These are not companies with huge history of motorsport, as you say, or
Yeah.
sporting cars. They're going to take a long time, and it's just not a focus for them.
Can I?
The,
Okay.
the other thing is that with the Chinese cars, I think one of the things is there was this statistic that came out, and I think we talked about it on a previous episode, maybe, that almost all of them, the bulk of their sales are done in China, with a very, very small piece of their overall
But
sales
growing.
being sold outside, with the exception of MG. MG does enough sales in Europe and in the Middle East to have a more diversified. The majority of their sales are done outside of China.
And it's the
interesting
most recognizable brand because of its heritage.
because it's
They
not
bought it.
a
Which
Chinese
is-
brand.
I don't know if
technically.
it's heritage. I think they just market and
It's a
market. I think
badge.
most people do not care about Morris garages. They don't care about the MG midget. It is just, it has no, this is what Lotus was the dream of GD to become, right? A British Porsche. And they were hoping that they would also make the same volumes. But Norfolk Hethel is not an easy place to tame, not an easy place to bring to heel, so to speak, and produce cars in that same number and quality. But you never know. Once they close the factory, they'll start pumping them out of China. You'll get Lotuses all day long. And people forget.
Apparently, they're moving the production to America now is the plan
It
because
won't
to
really-
avoid the tariffs.
Tariffs,
And they've got the hybrid Emira coming out.
I mean, it's all a little bit 5 days, a day late and a dollar short, as the Americans like to say. They need more product. The Chinese are surviving because they have so much product, and people keep asking me, how about this Chinese car? How about that? I haven't even heard of these cars. And they just keep coming out faster than we can even learn about them. And here's the wonderful cheat code about most Chinese car brands. And I say this hopefully without a hint of malice. They're all the same. They're all pretty much the same formula. 2-liter turbo, 2-liter turbo plus hybrid, 6-speed auto, some dual clutches in the early days. And then they just have different boxes on top, the chassis are very similar.
So you know why they did that, right? The whole 2-liter turbo thing, for example? They knew that the ICE war was already won by everyone else, right? Now they're coming out and they're putting out volumes and stuff. But there was no point in trying to engineer a better, superior ICE car when the future was electric. So what they did is they focused on copying what they thought was the best format or most popular format or most
resolved.
Yeah. And they took the 2-liter turbo engine. They thought that was the template, and they're like,
pinched
fine,
it from
let's run with it.
Mitsubishi, from VW,
From Audi, yeah.
Well, they've been making them, so they decided
So
to
they
keep
merged
making them.
And they moved their best and brightest straight on to EVs, where they
Where they've
are
been
supposedly world leading. Yeah.
I would say they are world leading.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody. It's funny because Faraday Future is starting up in this country, and boy, I really hope
don't know
they.
about that.
I do hope they do something because they're older than Tesla. Did you know
They've
that?
been threatening to launch a car for many
They've
years.
they've sold 16 cars.
They're owned, but they used to be owned by
So-
Evergrande, though, right? Or the real estate company. That's the
They-
problem.
I think
the real estate
everybody.
market
I think
fell out in
right now
China.
they have a huge stake in Abu Dhabi, but honestly, they predate Tesla,
Yeah.
and they've sold 16 cars. So this
They
is
better
last.
be good.
They have everything to play for in
There
the Middle
was
East.
a point where they were poaching like C-level execs from BMW,
Yeah.
like Faraday. That
Oh,
was
there's
why-
a lot of money in the world. We live in a
But
financialized
it's
world.
not easy, Alex. If you look at Anwar, whoever you are, I think if you look at the travails of Rivian, the travails of Lucid
Yeah, Lucid,
especially,
yeah.
which is always
I have a Lucid
sweating.
showroom below my office, and it's very empty.
Is it a very peaceful place to work if you were?
Oh, it's fantastic. You walk in and the dust. Like,
Because
I feel bad.
they
They're
did,
great.
see, everybody did something a little differently. Rivian focused on that kind of rugged, outdoorsy hipster thing, but they also marketed, and it worked for them. They had a laser focus on who they wanted to get, and they got there. I think they have a strong, loyal band of evangelists. Evangelion is a very different show. Evangelists who are absolute ambassadors for the brand. Lucid, they focused on product to extremely high level, but they made a lot of small mistakes which may be dooming them now because they focused on making an incredible product, but they didn't focus on the marketing, they didn't focus on their brand story, and so here they are now, right? A little bit lost at sea. And Tesla as well. Are you an Elon stan? Have you always been an Elon stan? Does it, quote unquote, just make sense to you? Then obviously you buy a Tesla. I have a lot of people who are car people who's like, oh yeah, I have a friend who commutes to Sharjah every day, and he has a Tesla Model 3. And he loves it, and he's excited about it, and I wouldn't dream of telling him that I don't like it.
Even a little bead of sweat down his forehead.
No, it doesn't care at all, because it fills his needs. Again, it goes back to the thing I said at the start. It fills his needs. If everybody else could make a car that fills the need as well as Tesla, it would be easy.
But to your point now, that if the Chinese are beating Tesla, it's only a matter of time, especially if they have brand, which is Elon, which is now, let's say, he has a mixed reception. He has a terrible reception with most people who want to buy an electric car. It's quite funny that he's gone for the wrong side of the polar. Of
I
that.
think I met Elon.
Go on.
There's not much to say. I mean, we interviewed him in Dubai for a summit years ago. This is when he was still semi-sane. He's always a little bit late. He's incredibly ADHD, and I will say that he's very dangerous in an interview because he will answer with the absolute truth. If you've asked him, have you had an affair? He'll say yes. He will has no filter whatsoever. And I could see his PR absolutely hiding behind a pillar, hoping that this would just be over very quickly, because you have a room full of people asking him questions and he would answer them absolutely directly straight. Unfortunately, the answer to the question, have you had an affair, is very much a question of, is it a fact or is it not a fact? And that's his view of the world, if you get my drift. So,
But that built a brand. That built one of the world's most valuable brands.
because people, they were getting what they, a kind of truth. And to be honest with you, I think he pushed through a lot. He doesn't get enough credit for how much problems he solved, right? And how many things that he made simple that were complicated, like the charging infrastructure. Everybody
Did he
else,
make it?
well, the idea of having the superchargers is a darn good one, and he pushed out there and he put the money into making it happen.
And he also what he did is opened up their proprietary charger to anyone else that wanted to use it. And a few companies did adopt it as the standard. I think Nissan being among them. Not that they're a great example of anything of a decision
Nissan
making.
could have been so much. Nissan were early in the
The
electric
Leaf.
game.
I saw the first generation Leaf on the road the other day, and I'm like, what a lost opportunity.
You know they're going to race that car. They built one. They built a whole Leaf
Yeah.
racing car.
I've seen it.
Fantastic. Yeah, really.
What a
interesting car.
marketing idea. But it's just a marketing idea, and that's where it stayed, right? It's like the GTR racing, etc. It was,
Formula E.
yeah.
I've been involved in that a little bit. Know a little bit of the story. They're Formula E champions now, drivers champions.
They've sold a lot of Leafs. And they did sell a lot of Leafs. Leaves, do we call them Leaves or Leafs?
I say Leafs.
I
Right?
think we should leave this topic alone.
Oh, God.
Yeah, do you want to?
But yeah, so I think now, if you're okay with Anwar, I think now might be a good time to switch gears, because I think I very abruptly cut off Anwar in the last episode, where we were talking about where he was actually getting very angry and frustrated about the demise of automotive journalism.
Oh, is that why I'm here?
Yeah, so it's actually not. We wanted to talk to you about Chinese cars. We wanted to talk to you about the UAE industry, and I think we've covered that in quite some depth.
I would
at
like to
this
say that I think I'm hopeful, but I'm a product person. I'm not a numbers person. I regard the numbers as something that you should have because you should have the facts at hand. But at the end of the day, you have to throw caution to the wind and you have to buy cars that you like, because you will not build passion through white goods cars. You absolutely will not. You can have a white goods car that you can have a, one second. And you can have a white goods car which has incredible resonance and significance to you. Like my family bought a CRV, and it was the last car that my mom was ever taken around in. So I have a lot of love for that car, even if it's nothing special. But those station wagons are our childhoods, the places where we bled in, where we loved in, everything.
Bled.
Yeah, if you are, when you fell down,
you fall
you
over.
go home. Etc.
Okay, so I have a question then, because I want to just kind of like bring this all back together. Shapes and stolen valor. So you made a very interesting
sounds
point.
like a brief.
I feel like I'm going to be pitched for something now.
No,
It's
no,
probably
no.
a timeshare in Marbella.
Yeah. With this shirt on. No.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned earlier that, and it was a very interesting point. I've never thought of it. It's not necessarily brand. It's not about brand image. It's about image that people like to portray. Hence, this idea of the G-Tour being a very popular thing, and the Land Cruiser.
Everybody's buying it, and nobody has too many bad things to say about it. That's fine.
But the Defender had to build the image of the boxy SUV for then the G-Tour to kind of stolen valor
Detour.
kind of.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? That like even with your example, Mo, with the what's the I don't actually know what's the thing you Empower G-Pow
GAC Empower.
GAC Empower. Okay,
Power.
the shape.
Oh,
of
I
that
get
car,
it now. Empower.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
my
We
God.
debated this on episode 2. Just
Oh.
saying.
Oh, yeah.
Empower,
My head is
Empower.
hurting. I
But
should have got
what
that.
does that car look like?
It looks like any other sedan.
That's my point.
Any
Or-
other fast sedan. yeah.
Exactly. Like talk about stolen valor. You design something that looks like that on Instagram, gives you that kind of look, but it's stolen valor, but maybe it's fine. I guess my question is that like, if it's all just about image and it's not necessarily brand image as much as image, and again, just going back to the Defender, not Defender, maybe they don't need to build brand image. They can just kind of continue to sail for some time on the brand image of those things.
Perhaps I can shine some light on this.
Yeah,
and let's
please.
put some nostalgia on that. You can do this and you can be very successful. I'll give you an example, something everybody will understand. Televisions. When you shop for a television now, you go to your local big box store. It's Scharf or whatever the German equivalent is, I suppose.
Jumbo.
Yumbo.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
And you just, when your TV gives up, you just go in and say, okay, what's the new one? How much is it? Is it OLED? Remember some buzzword, whatever. And then you go, okay, what brand? Then you start thinking, all right, do I want an LG, do I want a Samsung, or do I want a Sony? One of these, right? If you have less money, you're like, okay, whatever's cheap, but has the biggest size.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really think about it. And you go home and you'll have a pretty decent experience. And you'll be like, oh, wow, this TV has a lot of apps on it. You can do a lot of stuff on it. I had one of those TVs, and the problem is when those apps stop working or when it crashes, the whole TV goes down with it, and then you have a new, because everything's software interlinked. Whereas a TV that was just a TV and you plugged in a VCR or whatever will never fail because it's just a monitor.
Cars versus software-defined vehicles, eh?
Exactly. But if, and I am an old person, I may not look at, but actually I do look at, let's be honest. When you look at a Sony TV of the 1980s, this was made by people with passion. They were trying to beat what the British were not making in TVs anymore, the Americans were not making in TVs. The Japanese had a point to prove. It was a bit of cultural pride. And the further they got into it, they all started to go a little crazy. But they did stuff that nobody else was doing. And if you look at those TVs today, there are some that are very collectible, some of the CRTs, some of the products, some of the Walkmans. These are incredibly ingeniously engineered things that have survived over half a century. And to use those things today, if you were to play a tape through them or play a record or use those speakers or those amplifiers, you would get a kind of analog soul, a presence in the room that will make you think, I couldn't get this from just pressing play on my Spotify playlist. I couldn't get this from just, watching my normal LCD TV or whatever. These, when you watch G.I. Joe for something on those kind of images, the flicker, everything has incredible depth and quality. It's not perfect, but it has soul. Now, as time has gone on, we've forgotten all that. And we are going to absolutely forget what nice cars were like to drive because we're like appliance, right? That's where we're going. And in the same way, we've forgotten those TVs and they're all just, oh, here's my Apple TV. What does it do? I don't care. It just puts a thing on the screen. It just plugs in and does it quickly. And it doesn't do it better than anything else. I think Sony is a good example of a company that still makes really high quality televisions that are probably advancing the game. And the Koreans also really in a battle with them, which is good. The competition is excellent. You know what you get from China in the TV space? Nothing.
I love my Chinese TV.
But essentially the TCLs or whatever of this world, they're all just waiting for what Sony and Samsung did last year. And they'll just have it. They'll just take it and they'll put it out there. But they're competing on price. They're not competing on that stuff.
For now?
Yeah,
Not
so I mean,
think-
I
I
would
don't think
argue that
forever.
there are sectors like, for example, mobile phones and electric cars where they're actually leading. They are trying new things. They are, I liken some of the higher end Chinese manufacturers. It reminds me of the Japanese bubble era. I've said this to you before. They're doing like the
Floating car, jumping car.
jumping car, the one with the drone attached to it. Yeah, there's the Xiaomi cars now where you can buy any number of Xiaomi modules, and we have quite a few Xiaomi electronics, my wife and I. And what we do, there's an app that syncs to all of that, and you're like, wait, if I got the Xiaomi car, I could also add elements. They're little pieces. It's like it's modular. It's like Lego. You can add like a dash cam or whatever, and then it's all controlled by the master. So there's some really interesting things that I feel like they're trying out. And maybe I get what you're saying on a more mainstream level, but I think they're also trying a lot of new stuff.
All
which is
those
interesting.
cars and all those things are, to me, and I'll be harsh here, just gimmicks. Like those Japanese cars that had a motorcycle. How often are you going to need to motorcycle and chase after somebody, get off your little city turbo and jump on your motorcycle? How often were you needed, a DVD player or whatever the equivalent
Or
was?
GPS, remember back in those days?
The
yeah.
horrific navigation that you had from Japan in the late 80s and early 90s. How often would you need four-wheel drive clunking to the rescue in your Tercel, which you had a four-wheel drive? Some of them even had little like transfer cases, whatever. They were nice gimmicks. But they were not the cars that made the legend. Those are cars that are the sideshow. Now we're living in a world of sideshows, absolute sideshows. Whereas the cars that built the history of Honda are your Type Rs, your GTRs, your RX-7s, cars that when you strip all the hootenanny and gimmicks aside, twin turbo this, pop-up headlights, gimmicks. I love pop-up headlights. Let me finish my point.
Yeah.
When you strip it away, there is substance. There is something underneath that you cannot describe, but that draws you into it every single time, and that makes you buy another one. People often ask me, when I had a DeLorean, no need to say more, but people ask me, was it Back to the Future? Yes, 100%. The second question I get asked is, gull wing doors. And I said, and I hope I can swear.
Let's find out.
We shall. I don't give a damn. about the gullwing
Oh,
doors.
no.
Oh
You
no!
broke the
Sorry,
mic.
hold on. We have to stop the recording.
Yeah, but
Go on, no, go on. Please continue.
I re-edited in sentence.
Yeah.
I don't give a damn about the gullwing doors. It's of the least importance ever. It's more important to other people, but I don't actually care about it. But it made me feel something. And that car had something that no car I've ever owned ever again will have something like that. And I can talk about it for hours and hours. But that's what those Japanese cars had. That's what the Korean cars, like the N series that we're having from Hyundai, etc. Those are great cars.
60s muscle cars.
60s muscle cars were all absolute something that you can't ever get again.
British 50s cars.
Still.
Italian 50s.
Yeah, but these cars that are appliance cars, why do I say it's important? You need to drive them. You need to subject yourself to a little discomfort. I don't want to keep it too short. I don't want to ramble too long. But what's the number one thing people ask me when they want to drive a new car? I don't want to bang on the table because I have mics.
I'll do it.
Fair enough. Most people are like, is it a smooth car to drive?
Smooth.
Everybody's like, I want a smooth car. And we say, how was the
They
car?
want to not feel the car.
It was a smooth car. What's a smooth car? Defender. No, they'd hit the mic. What's a smooth car? Land Cruiser. Everything is smooth. You know what's also smooth? Pouring toothpaste on yourself. Covering yourself in butter. If you fly down the road, you will be smooth. But you're not actually getting anywhere. The whole point is making a car smooth is easy. Making it interesting means making it a little bit uncomfortable. Being a little bit out of your comfort zone. And then you start to experience something that you go, hang on, maybe I like that. Honda is a good example. I come to Honda a lot because the Type Rs, I don't know if I describe them for everybody. They are uncomfortable, not particularly talky, and hard work. But when you get there, there is a reward that's like anything, unlike anything else. That is what you describe about motorsport. That sense of being at the limit, being in your own personal limo every time you back out of the garage. Or if you are in an AMG, you are a high-powered businessman on your way to a rendezvous with somebody in Amsterdam, you know?
On the Autobahn.
On the Autobahn. You are just literally bullying everybody out of the way. If you're a Nissan Patrol, the music is blaring. You only can be in the Middle East. You see, these images flow. When you're driving your Xiaomi SU7, what is the image? The image that I see on their marketing is a blur of color and somebody standing in front of an indistinct space. That indistinct space is the entire problem. What is actually coming out of the mist? Nothing.
The myth.
There is no myth. There is no story. And if you don't know what a good car looks like, or if a journalist hasn't told you, I'm giving you a segue here. If somebody hasn't built that storyline for you, then, well, how will you know what quality is like?
On that note, Mo, you wanted to, before I took us on a detour, yeah, thank you very much, by the way,
You're
too. That was
welcome.
very good, yeah.
Yeah.
You cut yourself in butter and just slid on.
Exactly.
That,
I slid down the road.
So now we've had this very smooth segue.
Yeah.
So I think at the end, like as I started saying, at the end, near the end of the last episode, Anwar started talking about, very passionately started talking about how automotive journalism was dead. I think you officially declared it dead.
That hurts.
Well, no, I mean, I'm looking at it, but the magazine isn't doing terribly well. I think, if I could really make it really short, because I'm conscious of time as well. Thank you. I can see the gentleman here checking. We're all okay? Perfect. Opinion is something that I feel like is dying, unfortunately. I think
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's my actual issue. That I miss a bit of something.
Are you talking about conflict?
No, I'm talking about
or opinion.
Like everything's good or great these days. It's opinion. I miss hearing people talk about opinion. And there was that fact I heard about that the number of people that work in PR versus the number of people who work as journalists, and that proportion moving far.
Vanishingly small.
Exactly. Well, there's no more money in this. Like I'm the only idiot that still buys these stupid things, and I really do. And they're very expensive, but I very much enjoy it. But there are. I've decided downstairs to give up on this one. Because there's
why
nothing,
is that?
This is Top Gear magazine, and
but
no
why?
one that matters that will listen to this. But there's no friction. There's no conflict. There's no opinion. Everything's good or great. It's so shit, and I'm so bored of it. And I wonder again. Maybe Mo, you want to wrap this up into but what do you think?
I think where we arrived at this point, and it'd be interesting, and this is where I stopped him cold in the middle of his sentence in the last episode saying,
harsh.
we need to talk. Yeah, it was pretty harsh. I listened to it yesterday and I was like, I could have been nicer. But we wanted to get an actual journalist to come talk to us because I think what happened with it was last episode we talked about resto mods a lot, and we were talking about the Eccentrica Diablo, and I think that was the one that set me off on Top Gear, and possibly when I told him about it, pushed him over the edge as well. Is they kept saying how everything was nice, even when it wasn't. Like and I'll come back to my favorite like target, the Ineos Grenadier Quartermaster, has no payload, has no towing ability, but it's nice.
And why is it nice?
Charming.
So, and I think this is where we're getting at, is like you've moved to this like post journalism influencer kind of driven
PR.
Yeah.
It's PR.
And everything seems to be nice. So how are people making decisions anymore on what a good car is, which you so passionately and vividly described for us?
Go. I know, right? Wound you up.
A little bit. They asked the salesman, and the salesman, if he's a nice person, will sell you the car, and if he's a bad person, will send you in a totally different direction. I'll give you an example. I bought my Type R, and I should know all the tricks of the trade. I'll tell you why. I bought my Type R because I was mad. I went to Toyota. I wanted to buy a Supra. I like BMWs. I don't really give a darn if it's a BMW underneath. I just had a BMW sedan manual, which was fantastic, super tuned up. And I was thinking I'll get a Supra. It does the same thing. It looks great. It suits my image at this age in my life, my brand image.
Midlife crisis cars.
Exactly. But no, that was my convertible. I had it was not 29. So I had a constant series of midlife crisis. But I would like a nice Supra because it would suit the sort of loose, lean image I'm hoping to cultivate in my old age. However, the person at the counter who paid no attention basically asked me, and this is a quote that I shall never forget. She asked me, bless her, "Are you buying this for your son?" And I said, "Do I look like I am gifting my son a brand new Supra?" And then
You must have been dressed very well.
No, I was dressed like an absolute slob because I was trying to decide, do I want to buy a new Prado or a Supra? And she was like, "Well, decide. Which one do you want?" And Supra, is it for your son? And I was like, well, you've completely misread the situation, but that completely killed the car for me, even though I know it's a good car. And I literally walked across the road to Honda and said, "Give me what you got." And that's what I had up at the Type R. Of course, it is a great car, but that's the line. That's how simple the line can be. And that's me who knows how this trade works and how there are good salespeople and bad salespeople. What chance does a regular punter have? They don't know what good journalism is anymore. They don't know. It's all gone. And I feel kind of partially responsible because there was a point when we were doing motoring Middle East when we realized that financially, this is not going to work out. We cannot make ends meet. So we started working with manufacturers to create advertorials. We were very diligent about saying this is branded content. Not in the way of actually labeling it in those days, but making it very clear it was an ad. As clear as you can make it, waving stuff virtually in the air. But at the time, I did think, what if somebody takes the guardrails off and doesn't try to make unclear this? Maybe they try to hide the fact that it's an ad. Maybe they try to say it's a review. The number of people who do stuff now and they say it's a review of a car, but Top Gear is a good example. The Lamborghini Eccentrica is a good example. It's a review of a car. No, it's not. Have you driven the car? No. Do you have an opinion on it? Have you been asked by a legal team to vet your copy, which happened to me with Singer. So a lot of these companies will basically not allow you to honestly evaluate the car. And if you can't do that, you can't really review it. You're just marketing. And if you're just marketing, why would you read me? People watched us and read us because we were funny, because we were entertaining. But I knew how far you could push that emotionally as a person to be on like that. And I now look at YouTubers in the same space. It is incredibly difficult to do that 24/7, whole years round. They all burn out. Every single one of them burns out. And then they either start a gang of other smaller YouTubers and they Ponzi scheme their way up so they're making money out of it. Or they just burn out and transition like Doug DeMuro to like, I'm doing cars and bids now. Well, good for him. Smart guy. I met
He's
him.
a great GT.
Smart guy.
They build a following and sell a product afterwards. That's what ends up happening.
Yeah. But there are people who have to write, and I'm one of them. We're journalists. We have to have an opinion. I review films, as anybody who watches my Instagram knows. And that is the last bastion of, you can't buy this. You can't buy my review of anything of a film. But cars now, nobody cares. Nobody cares about good review, bad review. They just want to know, there's no more subtlety. There's no more nuance.
Smooth?
Is it smooth?
And do you know what's
Will it
funny?
upset me?
Look at this.
Will it make everybody, if you're, for example, of Asian descent, will it make your entire family happy? If you are individual, you've just landed from Europe and you've come from London, is it better than an i11? Is it like a Golf GTI? These are the only two questions that ever seem to matter, right?
Evo magazine used to have a lot of stuff. They keep talking about it every time I read it, and I still an avid reader. I really enjoy the enthusiast perspective. I am one, and every single time I read one of these group tests, which I think is one of the ultimate space. I love it. You put head to head, whatever happens, happens. Every single time, the beginning paragraph always says the same thing. 10 years ago, there would have been 20 of these things in this segment. Now, there's barely any. And do you know what's on the front cover of this Evo? And this isn't like one of these historical mags. There's so many of them, right? Magneto and Octane, all that nonsense.
Which are all great fun to read, honestly.
This, I hope this is there. This is just a load of old cars. There aren't any cars anymore.
These are modern classics.
This is
Bloody hell.
no. They've done it
Oh, I
from
feel
they
real.
did the 80s, the 90s, the noughties, and now they're into the teens. But they've kind of run out of stuff to do. So all they're doing now is going and be like, well, let's look at some old cars. Maybe that might
Because
be
what are you
good.
going to review?
Yeah.
If you were a product reviewer that was doing, oh God help you, the Xiaomi SU7, because the new
Jim
iPhone,
Farley's favorite
new
car.
iPhone came out this week, right? And I used to be such a tech person. I'd watch the entire keynote, and now I couldn't care less because nothing changes. It's a little camera bump here, some ridiculous feature there. Oh, it does landscape this now. Who cares? But when I was a product reviewer, all you could do, and I used to review product, all you could do was, oh, here's this product. Does it do the thing? Okay, it did it. Great review. Did it not do it? Send it back, get another one that did do it, and then say great review. It was not reviewing. That X factor of good reviewers were like, okay, what is it like to actually own? The subjective stuff matters way more than objective stuff of does it work is obvious. It has to work, right?
Nowadays, everything works, actually.
Everything does work.
Yeah.
Your Chinese car, if it doesn't work, just get another one. No big deal. But if your British car didn't work or failed to proceed, that was the entire point. The failure to proceed of a Jaguar is legendary. I had 2 Jaguars when I did the Mille Miglia, and both E-types, both of them failed.
Lucas Electronics.
How spectacularly did they fail? So, and I still talk about it to this day, that it was just such a magnificent thing when they both failed, and it was just dramatic. And we used Porsches after that. Porsches are great.
So the Porscheification is a the Porscheification.
Whole other podcast. But
Yeah, I know.
No, well, I mean,
I'm not allowed to talk about that.
Anwar talked me into subscribing to the intercooler, right? After I sold him on how good Andrew Frankel was, because I grew up reading Frankel in Autocar, and you know, it's still beautifully written. Like he's so good with words and everything. But then
he's good with the words. He is good with the words, Andrew.
yeah. But then the problem I'm running into with that subscription right now is there's very little actually being reviewed, right? And I remember
What do you mean? I'm an intercooler subscriber, so what am I missing out
By
on?
the way, it's always like the 911.
The 911.
Against this. The 911. The 911.
The only thing I read in recent history that got me interested was they did the review of the new Alpine electric hot hatch, right? The Renault 5
Because
phase
nobody's
one.
making cars.
Yeah.
And it
Nobody's
takes me back what you just said about product and and cars to review and things that don't get reviewed anymore or whatever is I remember in the 90s Autocar for months waxed lyrical about the Peugeot 406 because it was a regular family sedan that apparently drove like the gods engineered it. You know, like the ride, the handling, it became a centerpiece of Ronin, the movie, right? Like the end chase scene, the 406, and you didn't doubt it for a second because as a car enthusiast, you'd read the reviews. You
Sold
knew
a lot of 406s.
Yeah, you knew the regular ass 406 was this gem of a car to drive, even though I've never driven one. But now, tell me that about any what regular sedans do we have?
Well, the Fiesta's dead.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
So you hit a point there, actually, with the Ford, with the Peugeot, DNA. So those companies, they all had, like Richard Parry Jones, famously at Ford.
I was going to say that the 50-yard
Parry
handshake. Thank you.
Parry Jones
Yeah.
was a great
Yeah.
guy. There was a wonderful gentleman for Peugeot, so I forget his name, he's very French. But
Le Clement?
No,
No, he was the designer for
Patrick
Renault.
Leclerc,
Sorry.
I met him. Nice job. Thierry somebody, I think he was. But
Not his fault.
essentially, not Henry. He wasn't doing cars. When you bought a part of that brand story is that the cars had a DNA. whatever car you do, from the smallest to the biggest, like Mercedes, all have a similar DNA. They're a little bit like we have lots of money, but we're subtle. We're subtle. That's going away. Mercedes is no longer subtle.
The A-class.
Mercedes is crypto bro special cars.
Looks like a strip club in
The
every single
A-class,
one.
man.
Exactly. But a BMW, whether you drove a 320i or you drove an M5, they all had a feel. And anybody, mostly the wonderful gentleman from the Levant who drove a 320i, dreamed of his M3 and M5, but he loved it because he could feel it. And when he finally got his money and got that M3, he'd be like, yeah, I remember from that car to today, there's a straight line.
The newer class, man. We had this discussion on
Yeah.
Instagram, man.
When I bought my Mazda in 2022, I was reflecting on one of my first cars was a 2005, bought it brand new, first generation Mazda 3. And you remember, those were fantastic cars to drive, right? For what they were. Like the handling, the feel, the stability, like they were great.
And the
Underpowered
six-
as hell.
But Mazda never made sparkling engines, but the handling is still there in the Mazda 6.
And that's when I went to test drive the 6 over some of the other cars, some significantly more expensive cars as well, like the Genesis G70, I think it is. And I walked away still wanting the 6.
The
Never
Infiniti.
mind, huh?
But you don't know why. It's something, but it's in the,
The
back of
feel
your
was the same as the 3, yeah.
DNA.
The feel was the same, and it had a little
20
special
years
song.
later,
And then you start thinking, okay, what is the feel? Is it the feel just the way they've tuned the handling? Okay, you can copy that, which the Chinese have done very well. With all their cars are copies of JLR handling, etc. It's not rocket science to figure out how to set up suspension geometry. But there are other things that are not so easy to copy. For example, the way that you sit very low in a Mazda. It's like a cockpit. The controls form very easily to hand. The engine is very torquey. Everything is in your eye line. When you sit in a Mazda, after a while you're like, actually I like driving this, but because I'm seated right, I'm looking out right. The controls are not complicated. They have limitations. They have the weird stuff with the Apple CarPlay, with the controller and things, which they
It's great,
find.
but yeah.
But I actually like it, but a
Yeah,
lot of people
I do
don't.
too.
But then when you drive a Mazda, you're like, I like this car, I don't know why. Because you've set up by people who enjoy and love driving.
Zoom zoom meant something.
Yeah.
Zoom
They don't do
did.
great engines. And they never make great engines. It's not their thing.
It's
But-
not vroom vroom, it's zoom zoom.
Yeah.
But
But
that's why
Peugeot,
they-
etc.
that's why-
Peugeot did that.
that's
BMW did that.
So, in this world, did the death of journalism help contribute? I'm calling it the death. It's really good to make exaggerating statements in these kind of places. Did the death of journalism help accelerate the death of a good car? Because Richard Perry Jones, you remember that was him listening to journalists at the time in the 90s. What's his name? Kevin Hackett. Very famously, his favorite car of all time. Which Escort was that? Was it the Mark V? That was so bad that it nearly sunk Ford. And
Yeah, the one right before the Focus.
Exactly,
There was that
yeah.
Escort,
Yeah, but they made one of the greatest cars ever, which was the Escort Cosworth came out of that car. Because it was so bad that they came with something that was largely a reskinned Sierra Cosworth.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then did the RS 2000. They did some good cars.
The RS 200 or 2000, yeah, I'm
But
sorry.
because they cared about the response. When they
Of the
lazily...
journalist, that's my point, yeah.
Not just journalists. The journalists then led to people. Clarkson had a very outsized impact because he was just not very complimentary about that Escort, except the Cosworth. But as a whole, people were they bought that car because it was the Escort. And after a while, they're like, hang on, but it's not like the Escort I love. Like, you're just not trying anymore. And people start to respond to that. If you drive a Mercedes today, or some other lesser BMW, I think is still trying, but it's very hard under all the Russian nightclub nonsense. But all of their cars are not as special. Whereas if I drive any 70s Mercedes or 80s Mercedes, they feel that bank vault build quality. They have the clunks, they have the noises. They feel like baby Rolls Royces. But even more special because Rolls Royce, you're like a porcupine. The prick is on which side, inside or outside, right? But with the Mercedes, you're like, oh, I'm good. I'm in a Mercedes. But now you're like, but which Mercedes are you in? A35, A25, A250. Then the number starts to matter because you know people are looking. But if you're in an old Mercedes, you're like, I don't care. I could be in a 230, I could be a 280. It doesn't matter.
The baby Benz was designed to not be a baby Benz for that reason, right?
It was still designed to be a Mercedes.
Benz, yeah.
Whereas the cars that you're getting today, they're dumbing that down. So an A250 will not drive anywhere near as nice as an E-Class will. And an E-Class will not drive. It's very, very stratified. Porsche is very, very good at that. Porsche will give you what you want as long as you understand how much you're going to pay for it. And if you want this much, you'll get a Carrera T, which will be a really nice car, which will be enough car. But you'll still be looking at the GT3 and going like, I wish I had the GT3. You know,
I absolutely do not care.
nobody makes a car that is, in the immortal words of somebody from some anime a long time ago, fire everything. Nobody goes, let's just give it everything. The Escort Cosworth is everything. They're like, okay, we're going to make a Ford that is a rally car, and we're going to give it to people who know how to make rally cars, and it's going to be fast, and it's going to be a legend. Oh, and by the way, it's going to look absolutely insane. Civic Type R, last GTR, everything. Everything. That's why the Japanese cars are going up in value, because people are like, you know what? They put everything into this car. They didn't leave anything on the table.
So I have a brand which I admire more than any other at the moment, and it's Toyota. Because I think the 86, I owned mine for 12 years. We both had one. The Yaris GR, the Supra, the
GR.
Land Cruiser, the Corolla GR. I genuinely think that and I think it's because there's a Russian expression, right? The fish rots from the head down. But I think it could also be seen from the other perspective, like the thing works if the top of it is, healthy. And I think Akira Toyoda, thank you, I'll make sure I get his name right. The simple fact that he was trained to understand how a car is meant to make you feel is the reason that they're in this position. And how many of these car companies are no longer being run by car people? And is that a consequence?
To go back to the earlier part of our discussion, it's a lot of people who like the maths, who like the numbers, who don't want to drive cars. You need to have people who are crazy and like to drive cars.
Tim Apple versus Steve Jobs.
I mean, I think that goes back to
product guys versus someone who does logistics.
It's always a product. At the end of the day, you can
sorry.
number your way to kingdom come, but you need to have the product. And if you don't have the product, you'll get found out. Why is Jetour done well? Product. Is it a particularly great product? Well, we'll see when the T2.5 or whatever, the T3 or whatever, if people are willing to come and have another one. That's the longevity of it. But on initial first blush, most people are like, yeah, I'll have a go at that. And they seem reasonably happy because, everybody else seems to like it as well. But down the road, I don't know what happens.
Is there a road? I mean it. Like the thing I'm thinking about is that to a greater, a smaller degree, most of us have worked in cars or around cars. Is there a career path moving forward in 10 years, 20 years? I don't know.
In journalism?
In the car.
Yes, 100%. Mobility will be around for the rest of my life.
Mobility, though.
Yeah, but that's
Mobility.
my
There's
point.
a difference between mobility and cars, right? Like now,
but cars will be around. Cars will be around.
There's too many roads.
They may be, I'm more worried about things like Waymo, because Waymo actually makes it work to a reasonable level. And it doesn't matter. Once people start thinking, I don't want to drive, they don't even want to use manual gearboxes now, right? So they really don't want to drive. And
kind of over them.
Exactly. But you didn't grow up with them.
I did.
But did you, to the point, did you?
You did. So first of all, I'm a lot older than I look. Second of all,
early 70s.
Huh?
Yeah, in your early 70s.
But the second thing is, up until the 2000s, every single car my dad ever owned was a manual.
You're answering my question.
My first car was a Del Sol manual. Second car was a Mazda 3. Oh no, it was a Corolla, also a manual. Mazda 3 manual. Peugeot 207 RC manual. Toyota 86 manual.
And then what happened?
Then first of all, there's not a lot of manuals available. Second of all, I just didn't want to do it anymore.
So it changes. It changes. Why does that change?
And I don't miss the experience. I'll say that as well.
I'll tell you why. And I'm going to be slightly aggressive in my response.
Okay. That's why you're on both sides of the table.
Both sides of the table.
Yeah.
You needed to have an inspiration. My father had manuals his whole life. He doesn't drive a manual anymore, and he doesn't know why I do. But there was a Frenchman who I had to fix a computer for. His daughter kept... every other week he would come back. He's a lovely guy. He was an architect in Sharjah. I'm not sure if he's not anymore with us anymore. He would come into the office and say, I need you to fix the computer. And I get the computer back and it would be completely blank. The operating system would be like all messed up. And I was like, what are you doing to this thing? But he's like, I don't know. Just try and fix it. So I would charge him and I felt like bad. I'm like, dude, like what is going on with your computer? Because I'm not doing anything here. And he's like, okay, you need to come home with me and maybe it will make sense. So it's two stories in one to finish off our little chat, which has been wonderful. The first story is when I went out of the shop, on the street was one of the prettiest cars I've ever seen. I thought it was a Ferrari, but it was a 406 Coupe. One of the
Yeah.
prettiest. It was a
One of my
manual
favorite
3-liter
cars, yeah.
V6.
Ooh.
Up till that point, cars are just cars to me. Cars are getting out, going places. And for a lot of
Mobility.
people, their mobility, in the purest sense, getting away from your parents or getting back to your parents, depending on where you are. But it's just freedom and the open road or the wilderness. But that 406, we went back to his house in Sharjah. We get into his car and we leave Bank Street, we call Bank Street, now Khalid bin Walid Street, right? Absolutely redlining it, every roundabout, every end signal, all the way back to Sharjah. I've never got to Sharjah so quickly. This is probably 98 or 99. And I was hanging on for dear life. There's a bright red interior because it was actually made by Pininfarina, that car.
Mhm.
And I will never forget, as long as I live, the noise of that car, the grin on his face, the way he shifted gears, the way he dived into roundabouts shouting mud at every single person who blocked him off, every taxi driver. I was like, oh, you can drive a car like this. And you need a manual gearbox to do that. He eventually, I think I stayed with him through a few cars, but he had some automatics as well. But that car, every time he called me up and like, can we go for a ride in your car? I was 19 years old. I probably should have been not a child, but I said, I want to do this. And then that kind of informed the cars that I bought as well, because I traced it back to that experience. I had that moment, which changed me. As to why we had to go to Sharjah, it made sense when we arrived in Sharjah. And literally his road to his villa was like a sandy road, so he had a fishtail across. It was crazy. He was amazing. When I get home, I see the person who uses the computer is his daughter, and his daughter is mentally challenged. So every time she uses that computer, I don't know if she had autism, I don't know, whatever. There was no proper diagnosis. Nobody wanted to explain it to me, but she was a lovely, sweet girl. Every time she would use that computer, she would just drag and drop and delete things. She would just constantly like, oh, just play around, etc. So it was like she had a room to herself and she could just mess around with it. But he didn't know how to fix it, and he would just keep bringing it back to us. So I eventually came up with a very primitive imaging system. So I essentially created a bit of, this is for old people, remember this, there was a software called Norton Ghost, and you could basically create an image of that entire operating system, just like you have now as a partitions on your Macs and so on. So if something goes wrong, it just brings it back to factory. That's all it's doing is re-imaging, clearing out the hard drive, and pretty much putting the factory fresh install on it in one click. So I could do that, so he didn't have to keep coming to Dubai anymore. Although he kept coming for years afterwards, just chat, etc., and have a cup of tea. But when I saw his daughter, and I do a lot of work with the handicapped as well. So I thought there has to be some way to make life easier for him, because otherwise he'll just keep coming. He's happy to keep coming back in his car up and down, etc. But you've got to make things easier for him, and that worked out. And I think she probably used that computer a lot longer than most people, and he kept that car up to, I think, 120 at least. Because at 120, he was still coming to me. He was still slamming through all the gears. He just didn't care. And ever since then, whenever I drive fast, I think of that guy. I think of how he drives, because he was happy, made me happy, and I realized I was happy too. And I think my dad never, ever drove like that. And when I got in my dad, and then my dad would like, why are you driving like this? That doesn't seem like you, Imthishan. You seem like such a boring person. And yet that car unlocked something in me.
Oh, that experience.
That experience. Mm-hmm. And I think if you don't have that experience, and I'm not saying that your life is absent of joy and fun and pleasure. Everybody has thrills in different ways, right? But if you don't have that with a manual gearbox, it's probably not going to happen at this age. And nobody can tell it to you. Nobody can force it on you. It just has to happen.
But with where the car is going now, how many more people will ever get to experience that ever again? And I can imagine each one of us have had one. Is that dead?
Oh, no. It's dead.
Sorry, do you want to answer as well, Mo? Yeah.
No, I think, I couldn't possibly, as much as I'd love to respond to Imthishan about my inspiration, I couldn't possibly top the story that he's just told.
Is it okay?
So, Imthishan, why don't we close this out with, where can people find your work? Where can they find out about you? Do you want them to find you? So
I'm happy to be found. LinkedIn or Instagram, just look for my name, Imthishan, IMTHISHAN. I'm the only one.
Okay.
One of one.
Imthishan Giado. Or
you will not find me there.
Giado.
Yeah, but Imthishan Giado is one of one. I don't think
Yeah.
there's anybody else on the planet, and I mean that.
This is the opposite, Mo.
Yeah,
Mohammed Khan.
there are tons of Muhammad Khans.
Muhammad Khans?
Don't go looking for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember our social media handles and emails, so I'm way
But
too
this
tired for this. But
this has been great.
been wonderful. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm gonna drive back to Abu Dhabi now.
Bye, everyone. That'll do.